Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we will discuss about CNS infection and brain tumors. My name is Dr. Muhammad Sarfraz, Associate Professor of Medicine. The learning objective of this lecture would be describe three common syndromes associated with infections of the central nervous system. The student will be able to discuss the clinical presentations, diagnosis, including cerebrospinal fluid analysis and management of common CNS infections. The student will be able to identify risk factors associated with the development of invasive fungal infections of the CNS. As far as three common syndromes associated with the infections of CNS is concerned, there are meningitis, encephalitis, meningoencephalitis, and the third one is localized brain infections like brain abscess. It could be parenchymal, subdural, or extradural. The central nervous system may be infected by viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and helminths. The clinical presentation of a CNS infection may be acute, subacute, or chronic, depending on the virulence of the infective agents and the location of the infections. The key factors in the clinical presentation, depending upon the pathogenesis of spread of the infection to the CNS, virulence of the etiological agent, and area of the CNS involvement. So if the area of the CNS involvement is brainstem, then the condition would be complicated because the center of the CVS and respiratory are found in brain stems, and also there is reticular activating system. So any mild infection of the brain stem would cause drowsiness, and respiratory and cardiac compromise may occur. Similarly, pathogenesis of the spread of the infection, if the infection spread from the air, nose, throat to the CNS, the viral load or bacterial load would be high. So, and also depends upon the virulence of the etiological agent. Highly virulent organism would cause high damage as compared to the low virulence organisms. As far as meningitis is concerned, it may be acutely presented, subacute, or chronic form, usually caused by bacteria, viral, fungi, chemical, and carcinomatosis. Encephalitis usually viral in most of the cases, and very rare cases caused by bacteria. The most of the encephalitis is viral encephalitis caused by herpes simplex virus, and other virus may be the cause of the encephalitis, but most of the time herpes simplex viral infection is the most common cause of encephalitis. Then there may be meningoencephalitis, feature of both meningism and encephalitis like fits, headache, neck stiffness, etc. The third syndrome of CNS is focal CNS infection. It may be manifested by brain abscess. Brain abscess could be parenchymal. There may be subdural empyema or epidural abscess. The common sign and symptom of a patient presented to you with CNS infections, it is fever, headache, altered mental status, lethargy to coma. Neck stiffness may be there, and Kerning sign, Brzezinski sign would be positive. There may be increased intracranial pressure sign like papilledema, nausea, vomiting, abducens palsy, bulging fontanelle in infants, labor respiration, fits. The raised ICP may be found in meningitis as well as in encephalitis or brain abscess. The focal neurological deficit is usually present in encephalitis, or the patient who has meningoencephalitis may present with focal neurological deficit in the form of weakness of the limb, dysarthria, dysphagia, or any combination depending upon the area of involvement. As far as examination suspecting CNS infection, obviously we have to check mental status. We have to do cranial nerve and fundoscopic examinations. Meningeal signs should be elicited, should be checked. General physical examination, we have to look for rashes because in meningococcemia, most of the time there are skin rashes. Lymphadenopathy, cervical lymphadenopathy, specifically because if the infection resides in the upper airways, throat and mouth and ears, can cause lymphadenopathy and can spread to the CNS. Lab investigation, complete blood count, PTA, PTT, blood cultures, urine complete examination, blood and urine culture. As far as radiology is concerned, CT head should be done in each and every patient suspected of raised ICP, because if the raised ICP, the LP's lumbar puncture is contraindicated due to side effects of coning. Lumbar puncture is diagnostic. We have to check CSF for glucose, protein, cell count, and differential count, gram stain and routine cultures, and in specific conditions, cryptococcal antigens, acid fast bacilli stain and culture in case of chronic meningitis. The chronic meningitis most of the time caused by fungus and Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Then syphilis can also cause chronic meningitis. So in specific condition, if one suspects syphilis, we have to do VDR-LR, other viral studies. If suspected of other virus infections, then PCR of certain viruses could be done. So we have to do glucose, protein, cell count and differential. In viral meningitis, most of the time there is lymphocyte predominant. Normally less than 5 cells WBC are present in the CSF and all are lymphocytes. In case of meningitis caused by bacteria, there would be predominant neutrophils and cell count would be more than 5, usually more than 1000. And most of the cells are neutrophil in nature. In viral infections, the cell count usually may be around 100 to 200 and most of the cells are lymphocytes. Similarly, in fungi, the majority of the cells are of lymphocyte in origin. In tuberculosis patient, also the predominant cells would be lymphocyte, but the condition will be chronically presented, and one may conclude from the history and clinical examination if there is chronic meningitis, then if there is predominant lymphocyte, then the most likely it is tuberculosis. But if it's acute presentation and there is predominant lymphocyte, then most probably diagnosis is viral. Similarly, the glucose concentration in the CSF is 1/3 to 2/3 of the serum glucose level, and protein up to 20 to 40 milligram per deciliter, and glucose is 40 to 80 milligram per deciliter, or 1/3 to 2/3 of the blood glucose levels. So if the glucose is low, it is mostly caused by bacterial infections and tuberculosis infections. If glucose is normal and predominant cells are lymphocytes, the most likely diagnosis is viral etiology. CSF should be get enough to get your answers. CSF glucose is 2/3 of the serum glucose. As I mentioned earlier, it is important in diabetic patients. We have to do serum glucose simultaneously because in diabetic patients, the glucose would be high in the CSF. Also, in patient with hypoglycemia, the glucose would be low and it can alter the interpretation of the CSF results. So serum glucose should be sent simultaneously. Also serum protein should be sent simultaneously. If there is traumatic lumbar puncture, the CSF protein increases by 1 milligram for every 1000 RBC. So tube 1 and tube 4 for RBC when subarachnoid hemorrhage is in the differential diagnosis. It is not included routinely. But if you suspect subarachnoid hemorrhage, then tube 1 and tube 4 should be sent for RBC. Very high CSF protein level will make CSF yellow. Send a full tube of CSF for cytology, not just for a few cells. As far as meningitis is concerned, the presentation may be acute, subacute, or chronic. The most of the symptoms are fever, headache, with or without altered mental status. Chronic meningitis course is more gradual, less severe. In encephalitis, there will be mental status change occur early and may progress to obturations or coma. Behavior and speech disturbance may be there. The most likely organism causing meningitis are Streptococcus pneumoniae, H. influenza, Listeria monocytogenes, group B Streptococci, and Neisseria meningitis, and gram-negative anaerobe. The most likely we have to consider about Streptococcus pneumoniae, Neisseria meningitis in adult population, and in elderly population we have to consider three important organisms: Streptococcus pneumonia, Neisseria meningitis, and Listeria monocytogenes. And also the neonates less than 1 month, we should also consider three important organisms: Streptococcus pneumonia, Neisseria meningitis, and Listeria monocytogenes. 50 to 100 WBC if 90% mononuclear, for example, neutrophils, normal glucose or mildly elevated proteins. The most of mononuclear means predominant lymphocytes, and glucose is normal, mildly elevated protein. The cause would be viral or aseptic neurosyphilis. So in this case, enteroviral PCR, West Nile, IgM, herpes simplex virus PCR, or VDRL should be done in case of syphilis suspicion. If syphilis is suspected. If the WBC is more than 1000 and predominant WBC are neutrophil and glucose is low, elevated protein, then consider bacterial infection and do gram stain and culture of the CSF and blood cultures and relevant DNA testing. The WBC is 20 to 200 and more than 90% or 90% are mononuclear, for example lymphocytes, and glucose is less than 40 milligram elevated protein, then there may be fungal infections, tuberculosis may be there, so fungal cultures should be done, cryptococcal antigen, coccidioids, CF and coccidioids antigens, and AFP culture and PCR should be done for Mycobacterium tuberculosis. As far as treatment of meningitis is concerned, we have to focus our attentions regarding the age of the patient. Because in internal medicine we usually deal with the adult population and elderly population, we have to think about three organisms. The most important is Streptococcus pneumonia, Neisseria meningitis, and Listeria monocytogenes. In elderly population, we have to cover all these organisms, but in adult population, we have to consider two organisms: Streptococcus pneumonia and Neisseria meningitis. So the treatment of choice for Streptococcus pneumonia is ceftriaxone, third generation cephalosporin, or cefotaxime. Similarly, treatment of Neisseria meningitis is also third generation ceftriaxone. But some strains of Streptococcus pneumonia are resistant to cephalosporin. In this case, we have to give vancomycin initially. Along with ceftriaxone, we have to cover both organisms, Neisseria meningitis and Streptococcus pneumoniae. So ceftriaxone plus vancomycin should be started empirically in every patient in the adulthood range of age. And some strains of Streptococcus pneumonia are resistant to vancomycin. In this case, we have to give linezolid. If the patient is among the elderly population, then we have to consider Listeria monocytogenes as well. So we should add ampicillin to ceftriaxone and vancomycin empirical therapy. antibiotic level in the CSF reach only 2 to 10% of the serum levels. So we have to give more doses of ceftriaxone, vancomycin and ampicillin than usual normal dose, because only 2 to 10% of the serum level achieved in CSF. Viral meningitis is very common, often caused by enterovirus, and treatment is supportive. As far as chronic meningitis is concerned, it is mostly found in immunocompromised patients, and the mostly fungal infection caused by Cryptococcus neoformans. HIV can cause chronic meningitis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium avium can cause tuberculosis. And carcinomatosis meningitis also present as a chronic meningitis, and most of the tumor lung and breast can spread to meninges. As far as encephalitis is concerned, I have mentioned earlier, it is most of the time is viral in origin, and most common virus is herpes simplex. And meningitis caused by virus by herpes simplex type 2 usually, but in case of encephalitis, mostly herpes simplex virus 1 cause encephalitis. And the typical clinical features: altered mental status would be there, seizures, usually no oral lesions, headache may be there, raised ICP features may be there, fits may be there, and usually acyclovir can be started and it decreases the mortality. And there may be combination of meningitis and encephalitis. The condition is called as meningoencephalitis. In this case, we have to give meningitis empirical therapy as well. The infectious causes of encephalitis, most of the time it is viral, and the most common virus is herpes, and other viruses are HIV, influenza, rabies, tick-borne encephalitis, arboviruses, herpes B, West Nile virus. And bacterial: Mycoplasma, syphilis, toxoplasmosis, parasite. Similarly, Coxiella burnetii, Bartonella, Listeria can cause bacterial encephalitis or parasitic encephalitis. As far as management is concerned, we have to give acyclovir. Management of seizures should be done. Very high morbidity and mortality in case of viral encephalitis. PCR diagnosis of CSF for herpes simplex, West Nile virus, St. Lucie, EEE, CMV virus. As far as the brain tumors are concerned, there are various types: primary, most of the time primary, and secondary. Secondary comes from metastasis, mostly from the tumors of the lungs and breast. The primary tumors are usually of glial variety or non-glial variety. Non-glial tissue like nerves, blood vessels, and glands. The brain tumor may be benign and malignant. The metastatic tumors that are called secondary brain tumors come from breast and lung tumors. The benign tumors of the brain are classified into chordoma, craniopharyngioma, gangliocytoma, glomus tumor, pineocytoma, pituitary adenoma, and schwannoma. Chordoma are benign, slow-growing tumors that most prevalent in people aged 50 to 60 years. Their common locations are the base of the skull and the lower portion of the spine. Although these are benign, they may invade the adjacent bone and put pressure on the nearby neural tissues. They are rare tumors, contributing only 0.2% of all primary brain tumors. Craniopharyngioma typically are benign but are difficult tumors to remove because of their location near critical structure deep in the brain. They usually arise from the portion of the pituitary gland, so nearly all patients require some hormone replacement therapy. Gangliocytoma and anaplastic gangliomas are rare tumors that include neoplastic nerve cells that are relatively well differentiated, occurring primarily in young adults. Glomus tumors in general contribute to only 0.6% of the neoplasm of the head and neck. They are frequently benign and typically are located just under the skull base at the top of jugular vein. Meningiomas are the most common benign intracranial tumor, comprising 10 to 15% of the all brain tumors. Although a very small percentage are malignant, these tumors originate from meninges, the membrane-like structure that surrounds the brain and spinal cord. Pineocytomas are generally benign lesions that arise from pineal cells, occurring predominantly in adults. They are most often well-defined, non-invasive, homogeneous, and slow-growing. Pituitary adenoma are the most common intracranial tumor after glioma, meningioma, and schwannoma. The large majority of pituitary adenomas are benign and fairly slow growing. Even malignant pituitary tumors rarely spread to other parts of the body. Adenoma are by far most common disease affecting the pituitary. They commonly affect people in their 30s and 40s. Although they are diagnosed in children as well, most of these tumors can be treated successfully. As far as schwannoma is concerned, they are common benign brain tumors in adults. They arise from along the nerves comprised of cells that normally provide the electrical insulation for the nerve cells.